Tom Weber from our monthly program committee will now introduce our speaker.
Please help others overcome the symptoms of depression. This was my brother's message to his family and friends before his death on March 27, 2015, after struggling with depression to suicide. I have a dream that in the West Michigan community, every school student, every parent, and every grandparent from all walks of life will share this desire to help others who are struggling with the fastest growing epidemic, depression and mental illness. You'll hear more about the statistics that support this dream in a few moments. So I'd like to ask you 3 simple questions. 1, why are people suffering from depression and some even killing themselves? 2, how do you feel about that? And 3, what are you going to do about it? Be Nice is the tool to help our community improve lives and save lives. It is a tool to help others overcome this illness of depression. Thank you for joining in this important initiative in education to help save lives. Thank you.
Good morning. As you just saw, in 2015, a family took a difficult and painful experience and raised funds to drive the Be Nice movement. Jeff Elhart of Elhart Automotive in Holland lost his brother and business partner Wayne to depression. In response, Jeff and his family have been on a transformative journey of grief, understanding, and hope. Elhart has left a charge to fund the program that creates a positive cultural change through simple daily actions. The Elhart family has poured themselves into the cause of bringing mental awareness and suicide prevention to West Michigan almost immediately after Wayne's death, through the collaboration of the Mental Health Foundation of Western Michigan and their trademark educational program, Be Nice. Through the formation of 5 donor-advised funds throughout Western Michigan, the Wayne Elhart Be Nice Memorial Fund has provided hundreds of thousands of dollars in support to bring much-needed education to K-12 schools, businesses, and churches. According to the Mental Health Foundation of Western Michigan, 1 in 5 people will develop a mental health condition at some point during their lives. And 50% of all mental illnesses develop by the age of 14. Mental illness is the cause of 90% of deaths by suicide. Be Nice is a product of the Mental Health Foundation of Western Michigan, and it's a self-starting curriculum and kit for schools, communities, and businesses that provide comprehensive mental health education for elementary, middle, and high school students. It also complements other mental health initiatives already established. Jeff Elhart is the president, owner, and chief cheerleader of the Elhart Automotive Campus, a family-owned dealership founded in 1965, located in Holland, Michigan. He's a graduate of General Motors Institute with a degree of marketing and finance. Besides running the dealership, he serves as the chairman of the board on the Mental Health Foundation of Western Michigan. He's involved in his church, Christ Memorial. He's also been the past Commodore of the Macatawa Bay Yacht Club, president of the Holland Area Chamber of Commerce, and the Holland Economic Development Corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Elhart.
Can everybody hear me? Well, Tom and I, that was very kind of you. Tom and I served on the the Holland Chamber of Commerce, Holland Area Chamber of Commerce years ago on the executive board, and I think I followed Tom, or you followed me. We're a couple years apart back in the early 90s as chairman of that organization. So I have a lot of respect, and this brings back a lot of great memories. So thank you, Tom, for the great introduction. You'll see my title up there, Playground Director 2. There's a purpose why it's 2, because Wayne was the original playground director of the Elhart Automotive Campus. He gave himself that title because it was his job to make sure everybody could play well in the sand together. And that's the kind of guy he was. He was larger than life, and those of you in this room, many of you do know who he was and spent time with him, would know that he was a great playground director. So how did we get into this? Obviously, Wayne died from mental illness. Excuse me while I fix my earpiece here. Wayne died, can you hear me? After Wayne died, it just seemed like there was a void. Like we didn't have the knowledge and what to do. We saw the warning signs, some warning signs of Wayne of going into depression, but we just didn't have the tool to know what to do. I got him to his primary care physician, brought him to church, he recommitted himself to Christ, but it wasn't enough. So I read all the books, our family read all the books under the sun on suicide. I understood depression because I deal with depression myself. I'm medicated, I'm fine, so I understood the depression part, but I didn't understand the suicide, how you get to that point. So I read all the books, so I am not a scholar. I am not a psychologist, I am not a psychiatrist, I don't pretend to be, I'm not a therapist, but I am an advocate, and I'm very passionate about this topic of mental illness awareness and suicide prevention. So what you hear from me is from what my passion is, and not from my degree. But my resume is this. As he touched on already, we developed 3 donor advised funds through 3 area community foundations, one in Holland, one in Muskegon, and one in Oceana County, where my mother lives. First of all, I'd like to point out my father, Ken, and Margaret here are in the audience. Let's give them a hand. They lost their son, I lost my brother, and it obviously affects us. But we threw ourselves into this topic of what were we missing? And so we started this fund only after we found out what this Be Nice was about. And I'll get into that. And that's what threw us into the mental illness awareness and suicide prevention arena. Secondly, I serve as the chairman of the board. I found myself on the board of this Be Nice thing, this program, this culture changing, if you will. Christy Buck, the executive director of the Mental Health Foundation, came to me and said, we would like to, I said, I need you and some others to be part of an initiative that we're bringing this movie to Holland, Michigan, and it's a tool to help describe mental illness and suicide prevention. And I said, I'm working on this acronym, and this acronym is called depression. It was something that I was trying to start on my own. I really didn't want to start anything, but it was the word depression, make an acronym, not real positive, right? So Christy Buck comes in with the Mental Health Foundation, and I tell her what I'm doing. She says, well, we have it. What is it? Be Nice. What's that mean? I thought, oh my gosh, this is Wayno. This is my brother. This is perfect. I don't need to start anything. All we need to do is collaborate. So that collaboration then led into, okay, how do we get this education into the most dense population, the most vulnerable population in society, and that's our K-12 schools. And what's the biggest roadblock to get that into the schools? And that's money and their budget, because it does cost money to bring this topic into, and this culture into schools, because they're licensed professionals that take time to come into the schools to do the job. So I find myself as chairman of the board of this organization. And finally, the National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention. David Litz, maybe some of you know, he was a graduate of Hope College here. He got me onto this National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention. It's the only public-private sector collaboration on this topic. David Litz has a wealth of knowledge in suicide prevention. In fact, he authored the suicide prevention program for the U.S. Armed Forces. And he lives in Holland, Michigan. And I got to know him, and I got on this committee, so I serve on this executive committee. We meet twice a year, but we meet monthly on the phone. I served with people like Kay Warren from the Saddleback Church, who lost their son to suicide, and others. So those are my only credentials that I can speak of. So let's get into this topic of suicide. From a global perspective, over 1 million people that take their lives by suicide. And this map the light-colored countries are those that are less in terms of suicides per 100,000 population. And the one in the darker colors, like Russia and India and others, are higher levels. The United States of America ranks right rather in the middle of 176 countries. But it's interesting, I was in Seoul, South Korea last October for business because we have Hyundai and Kia in our lineup of our business. And I always look at suicide rates by country, and they're ranked in the top 5 in the world. And they're more than double of the United States, almost triple the United States. And their culture is that the young people are expected to take care of the elderly. And yet the young people are driven by education, by their parents, to academically excel. And so the parents are taking their lives because they don't want to be a burden to the grandchildren. In fact, in Seoul, Korea, there's the suicide bridge, the bridge of death, that I saw when I was there. And that's where many people take their lives in Seoul, Korea. Just an interesting fun fact on the world. So what about the United States? This is an interesting graph because it goes from 2005 to 2015. And 2005, you'll see it's more blue. In 2015, up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see it grows more to red. Red is worse, blue is better. You'll also find that it's up in the upper states where you have high density of Native American population. They're very vulnerable to suicide. But what's the good news, if you're really to keen in on Ottawa County, it remains dark blue, which is a good thing. And here you'll see that Ottawa County is one of the lowest counties in our state. If I can get this, where Ottawa County is, in terms of suicides per 100,000. This is an eye chart, but what I want to just point out to you is that in this lower left-hand corner, 76% of deaths by suicide are males. And then this upper left-hand corner, if you take 40 to 49 to 80 plus, makes up over 50% of deaths by suicide. And they're white males, and they're 40 to 80 years of age. That's who we are in this room. My brother was 60 years old. He was a male, he was white. He fit the character of death by suicide. Precipitating factors in suicide, mental illness by far makes up the #1 reason why people will take their lives. There's suffering with a mental illness. Most of the time, it's depression or anxiety. It could be other forms, bipolar, schizophrenia. but 90% of the time it's going to be under the illness of depression or anxiety. 1 in 5, you heard that statistic. If you were to take this row and that outside row, that would represent somewhere around 20% in this room. Just look around a minute. That's 1 in 5 of us that are dealing with mental illness. It's a serious thing. So the good news is that 80% of us, those in the middle and the outside, it's our jobs to be the lifeguards and to help those that are suffering. So, when you think of stop, drop, and roll, what do you think of? Fire. When you think of depression, what do you think of? I heard the right answer here, but you can almost hear a pin drop. If you go to Zeeland Public Schools or Holland Public Schools, when you ask that question, when you think of depression, what do you think of? It'll be a resounding, be nice. They get it. They understand it. They live it. It's in their culture. It's in their classroom. It's in their hallway. It's on their sports fields. It's created in their culture. And they bring it home. And their parents are living in, and their grandparents. So what does depression feel like? Imagine the last bout of the flu that you had. Imagine where you were in your house. I know where I was. I was holed up on a couch in a ball with about 3 blankets on me, and I felt like I just wanted to die. You just have that sense of hopelessness. Is this ever, ever, ever going to get over? Instead of 3 to 5 days that flu lasts, depression can last for weeks, for months, for years. So the formula for creating the foundation for knowledge and understanding what makes people ill and what makes them suicidal is that we need to, first of all, have some knowledge. With knowledge, we can have the confidence to take action to help others. Because this is really, this is a learning opportunity for those, all of us, but especially the 80% of us that don't suffer with mental illness. Because it's our job to be the lifeguard for those that are suffering. So I like to think of this arena of mental illness awareness and suicide prevention in 3 circles, and they all intersect. The bottom is support, in other words, survivors of suicide, those maybe have attempted or those that have lost loved ones, like our family. Then we have the treatment side, and then we have the education side. Can't see all that, but the world that I live in and our family lives in is the education side. That's the prevention side. It's like getting good preventative maintenance on your car. You maintain your car, it's going to last longer. You maintain ourselves, we're going to last longer. So that's where we spend our energies in this. The treatment side, we have wonderful treatment partners in our area. We have TCM Counseling, it's a very unique delivery model for counseling. We have Holland Behavioral Health, Pine Rest, and others that do a wonderful job in terms of treatment. In support, our churches are doing a nice job. Christ Memorial Church, Third Reformed Church are doing a nice job in terms of providing small groups for support. So knowledge is to educate the public about mental illness, suicide prevention, teach understanding the stigma related to mental illness, train the individuals in identifying the warning signs, and we'll get into this, and to empower our community to show compassion, respect, understanding, and acceptance of mental illness through one iconic voice. And that's what I want to drive home today, is through one iconic voice. There are other tools out there other than Be Nice, but there is no other tool that has, that even if you don't know what NICE stands for, and you see someone with a t-shirt that says Be Nice, it's not a bad message, is it? It's not a bad message. Confidence. Be Nice is a tool to invite, challenge, and empower. It's a mental health education suicide prevention program, but it really is a culture building opportunity. And then action, you can take action once you empower yourself and your community to be a lifeguard. It's not our job to be the emergency medical technician. Our job is to be the lifeguard. Pull the person out of the water, in other words, until the EMT arrives to help. And those are the professional treatment folks. So what tool will you use to be a lifeguard? Consider a tool that's easy, that's simple, that's rememberable, and easy to use. Consider Be Nice. So, the NICE action plan. It's notice, invite, challenge, empower. The B is be aware. B, we just covered on be aware that 1 in 5 of us deal with a mental illness. And 90% of those that have a mental illness die, not 90% of the people that have mental illness, but those that die by suicide are suffering with some sort of mental illness. So the first action tool within Be Nice is N. N stands for notice. Notice what's right and good about someone. And then and only then will we know what's different about them. And that's where we need to take the first step of action. I'll use Wayne as an example. Wayne loved to snow ski in the wintertime. In fact, he skied 60 days a year because he was retired out west. He loved to boat. He loved to be on his boat. He'd ride down Kalamazoo River with a cigar in his mouth and a pad of paper in the afternoon, and that's where he'd make all his notes of what he needs to do when he goes back to work, because he solved all the world's problems. But notice what's right and what's good. What was right about him too is that he loved to be around people. His glass was always half full, never half empty. But now, we notice what's different. Wayne, the summer of 2014, the year before he died, summer before he died, he never put his boat in the water. He made no plans to go skiing out west. He quit drinking alcohol, which is a good thing, but unlike his character. He enjoyed a glass of wine or beer, but he quit drinking alcohol. His glass was half empty. He thought he was going to run out of money. Things were not as rosy as what they used to be. So when you recognize changes in behavior that last 2 weeks or longer, that is a sign of depression. And that happened with Wayne. In Wayne's case, there were 4 or 5 major changes in his behavior, and therefore, it was time for us to take notice. We did notice, but unfortunately, we didn't know what to do.
Now we know the N in NICE stands for notice, but what does the I stand for? It stands for invite. Invite yourself to start a conversation.
Okay. So invite. So the next step is when you notice a change in somebody's behavior, the last 2 weeks or longer, in Wayne's case, months, it's time to take notice and invite yourself into that person's life to have a loving and caring conversation. And this does not have to be a family member. It doesn't even have to be a friend. I had someone call me yesterday who I don't know, whose 21-year-old son has told him the night before last that he wanted to kill himself. So I went through the NICE. What does he normally like to do? Well, he likes to normally fish with me. When's the last time he did that? Well, it was last summer. What does he do when he gets home? He holds up in his room. Is that like him? No. So then my recommendation is that we have to have a loving and caring conversation, because the typical thing is when we exhibit these, we have a family member, a friend, or someone we don't even know, exhibit these changes in behavior, what do we typically say, especially as a stubborn Dutchman? Hike up your bootstraps, right? Get to work. It's no big deal. You got to figure it out. You're a man. You can handle this. Well, that's not the way it works. At least it doesn't work with Be Nice program. So, with love and care, it's our job as lifeguards to say, Christy, I've noticed these things about you. I really am concerned. These things you normally love to do, you're not doing. I love you. Is there a reason why these things are happening? C. C is to challenge. C is the tough one, because this is where the rubber meets the road, as we say in our car business. C is to challenge. Challenge the stigma that's associated with this illness. There's stigma and shame associated with mental illness. I'm going to tell you a quick story that January 2016, some 8 months after Wayne died, I invited 9 pastors to the dealership. We had a little roundtable discussion and then broke up into small groups. And I'll never forget 2 comments the pastor said. One comment was, we don't feel it's our business to get into your business. And the other comment was, you know, from Holland or Zealand area, when people know you have mental illness, you're kind of marked for life. The church was the first place that I went to bring mental illness awareness and suicide prevention education. They're the first ones to do this. But the good news, there are 50 churches in West Michigan now, out of Kent County now, that are bringing Be Nice culture into their church since February, which is a terrific, terrific sign of advancement. So the challenge, we have to ask the tough question. I've noticed these things about you. They're not like you. I love you. I'm very concerned about you. Are you thinking of killing yourself? I didn't ask that question. So I want you, this is a learning opportunity for you, right? I want you to look straight forward at me, not at your neighbor. And I want you to repeat after me. Are you thinking of killing yourself? 1, 2, 3. Are you thinking of killing yourself? How many people have asked that question? Okay. Not many of us. It is not the green light for that person to take their life. It's totally the opposite. And I was one to believe that would be the green light. But they're hurting so bad that they're so far in the well and so deep in the well that they can't find their way out. But now all of a sudden somebody observes and says, hey, somebody knows, somebody cares, somebody loves me, and they're going to help me. So, if they say yes, the next question is, do you have a plan? And I've asked that question. Some people will have a plan. If that's a situation, it's time to immediately empower ourselves to get them to the emergency room. Many people say they don't have a plan. Even at that point, if they have considered killing themselves, we cannot overlook that as not being serious. That is a serious matter and requires serious attention. No different than if they woke up with pneumonia or bleeding. What would we do? We go to the doctor, we go to the hospital, and there's no shame, right? The same thing applies to our head. Wayne died of a brain disease. He died of mental illness. It's a very complicated illness. And I don't pretend to know and to be here to tell you how it works, but I know his brain was broken. But with this tool of Be Nice, we can improve and potentially save lives. So we have to ask that question. E is empower. This is where we have to take it upon ourselves to be the lifeguard and bring that person to a profession. In Wayne's case, I brought him to his primary care physician, but primary care physicians are not necessarily trained today to take on that kind of case, and mostly are referred to some other course of action, or maybe not at all. Our system is getting much, much better. Those of you that have gone for a physical in the last couple of years probably are being asked questions, how's your mental health, right? And if you answer yes to 2 or 3 of those questions, there's a back side of that form. And that form is for suicidal thoughts. And they're getting it. Our system is getting it, but only in the last few years. So our job then is to empower ourselves to get them professional help. The period at the end of Be Nice means something. It's simple. It's all it is. It's simple. It's Be Nice, N-I-C-E, period. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't make it more difficult than it really is. It truly is not that complicated until and when somebody has a serious mental illness, and that is obviously requires professionals.
You made it to 11.
So, where have we gone with Be Nice? One silo at a time. We brought it to schools, to businesses, to churches, and to communities. This is what it looks like in schools. And here's what it looks like in businesses.
The first time I heard about Be Nice, I realized quickly that it fits a gap in our wellness program, and that is the idea of mental health. But as I thought about it, I started to realize this is even more than just about mental health. This is about our culture, and I think it fits very nicely with what Cassie Engineering is trying to do, and that is to become an employer of choice. And as I looked at the Be Nice program and the materials and concepts in it, I said, even the term Be Nice has this implication of caring. And caring relates to empathy. And if you have empathy for people, you'll treat them with dignity and respect, kindness, and consideration. And if you do that, then that helps an organization become an employer of choice. So Be Nice to me is another way that Cassie Engineering is taking a step forward in trying to become an employer of choice.
They do a great job, as well as Herman Miller here in Holland, Zealand, and a number of other companies have taken to Be Nice and become part of their culture. Obviously, our company's done as well. Before I get to the next slide, I'd like just to talk a little bit of how we finally got into church. I attend Christ Memorial Church, and our pastor, Jim Liskey, at the time, after some convincing, decided that he would take May, which is the National Mental Health Month Awareness Month, and provide a 4-week sermon series on NICE using 1 Kings 19. He did that last year in 2018, and he did it again this year in 2019. And delivered a wonderful teaching series on what it is to notice, invite, challenge. And you can find, if you think about this, even the parable of the Good Samaritan. If you think about the parable of the Good Samaritan, I mean, it's all be nice. Right? Good Samaritan noticed, he invited, he challenged himself while two other, the priest, the Levite, walked by, and he helped the person to the inn. He didn't take care of the person. He didn't fix that person. What did he do? Here's money. Take care. That's be nice, in essence, in real simple form. Here's Jim Liskey from 2018.
Physical, medical treatment for the rest of our lives. Friends, that's just who we are. That's not a failure. That's not a problem. That's just who we are. Like anything else, God will use that in you and I to create a sense of ministry to those around us who are struggling with the same things. Many times we find ourselves in these situations through something as normal as grief. The more intense the loss of the individual, the more likely that grief will be such that it will be a burden that we collapse under. Friends, what we need to understand today is the church should be the first place to run to that sense of defeat. I think it's because of our lack of understanding, or maybe our own fear of our own inner self. Maybe it's not having tools. I'm not sure why, but I'll be very frank with you. I'm not sure the church has done this very well over the years. I'm not sure we've allowed safe spaces as we're called to, as the Church of Jesus Christ. Again, we're not going to go backwards and blame, but as a church, I hope over this month we pick up those tools. What does it mean to be a place for people who are struggling with this wound that is most often very invisible? What does it mean for us to have the tools and the ability to look deeply into one another's eyes and just notice something's not quite right? And what does it mean for us to learn to invite people into the process of healing, to challenge them with how to get help and how to find tools, and then to empower them to move through this? Yeah, you're going to see a lot of people with Be Nice t-shirts on. I'm really a fan of not reinventing the wheel and joining something that's working, but you're going to find that this NICE is right on 1 Kings 19. It's exactly what God did with Elijah.
Pretty powerful. 63% of the congregants, 500 people that were surveyed, could recall what NICE stood for 2 weeks after the 4-week sermon series. I think that's pretty incredible. So I'm going to test you here. N stands for notice. I stands for invite. C stands for challenge. E stands for power. And the period is simple. It's all it is. Best. Great. GDSU is finalizing. In fact, August will have our final report of our evidence-based study. It's been a 3-year project. And I have to tell you, the professor at our last board meeting, which was last week or the week before, came and gave the qualitative evidence and quantitative evidence and to us preliminary until we get the final report. And he had tears. Here's a professor from GSU with a bow tie, stereotypical professor in my eyes. And he's got tears coming down his eyes. He said, in one of my interviews, I talked to someone, they said, this saved my life. And so the biggest thing that I've got underlined here is it provides one common language. And as I mentioned in the video at the start, it's so easy to get onto one common language. We don't need to compete with one another. Let's get on to one common language. It has a very simple and easy to understand message. So, nearly 500,000 people have been impacted in the West Michigan area. 14 county from Oceana County to Kalamazoo represents 1.6 million people. So our goal is to get to 50% penetration of impacting youth and adults through K-12 schools, through the students, through the teachers, through the counselors, the administrators, through the parents, through the grandparents, and then the employer. And through the employers. Can you imagine a family that's in their 40s that have 2 children? They both go to school. They both go to Holland Public School, and Holland Public School is engaged in Be Nice. One person works for the Holland City Police. They're engaged in Be Nice. The other person works at Herman Miller. They're engaged in Be Nice. They have grandparents that live in Freedom Village. They're engaged in Be Nice. And all of a sudden, everybody understands the same language. It's the stop, drop, and roll that every 5-year-old knows. And why can't every 5-year-old to every 95-year-old know what Be Nice is? So I'd like to read you something. This is a note that Brother Wayne, my sister-in-law Kathy, found 16 months after he died. She went through everything in the house looking for a note. The only thing we found was that weekend, that day that he died, he had a Bible that he borrowed from a friend of his 4 days earlier. And he was looking for a Bible that was easier to read, because you have to understand the Bible he was reading was a Bible that he received from First United Methodist Church when he graduated from 3rd grade. And it was a King James version. And I said, Wayne, you might want to try something a little easier, NIV or Message or something. So he called a friend of his 4 days before he died, and he asked for if he had a Bible. It was easier to read. So a brand new Bible, underlined in pencil, because I don't think Wayne wanted to destroy it, was Romans 8:1. There's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. He knew where he was. He knew that God had received him. He knew that he had a place in heaven. 16 months after Wayne died, Kathy found this in a pocket in his coat that somehow she missed. And she placed this coat on her side of the coat closet. It was a cool evening on July 15, 2016, 16 months after he died. And she walked out with his coat on. And she unzipped the pocket and pulled out this note. And this is addressed to many of you here. So this is very personal to many of you here. It says, and I know this by heart, but I'm going to read it anyway. Kathy, family, and friends, I love you all. This depression has gotten the best of me. Do not blame yourself as it was me. Please use my illness to help others. God, please help me to help others. Sign Wayne. So, at the beginning I challenged, what are you going to do about it? Time, talent, treasures. There's a document that a good salesman wouldn't come out here prepared not to ask for the order, but there's a sheet of paper here you'll find outside if you didn't grab it on the way in. How can you help? You can volunteer your time. There's many activities that Be Nice is involved with. Talent, share the knowledge you received today. Share it with your family. Share it with your friends. And this on here is a website. You can go on to the videos that didn't play, will play online by going on to this website. There are 12 minutes total. There are 4 3-minute videos. It'll walk you right through what it is to notice, invite, challenge, and empower. And finally, treasure. We do have the Wayne Elhart Be Nice Memorial Fund, 501c3 set up through the Holland Zealand Community Foundation. Many of you here have given, and we're so grateful for that. These monies go directly to pay for this curriculum, but also, more importantly, the culture building within schools, and now we've expanded it to churches as well. And you'll see the mission on the bottom of that. As well as you'll find a bookmark that will explain the program of Be Nice and, of course, the wristband. So take those on the way out. Thank you very much. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but hopefully you got the message through me on maybe even a more personal note. So with that, I'd like to entertain any questions.
We're going to take any questions from the audience. Anybody have a question? I'm going to be running around like a chicken. So, can you grab this?
Thank you, very inspirational. I noticed in the statistics that only 300 veterans were involved in, as a Vietnam vet, I understand there are more veterans that died suicide than actually died in the war.
Yeah, veterans, there's 22 veterans that die each day. They make up 20% of the U.S. Deaths by suicide. There's one way in the back. In the United States. Totally, hugely important segment of those people that are vulnerable to suicide ideation and completion of suicide. We we're met with Barry McAlpine, many of you may know, very active in the Vietnam Veterans Association throughout the state of Michigan. It's an area that we need to penetrate and get to. We've been in front of a few of those locally in Holland, the disabled American vets and Vietnam vets, but we have a lot more to do there. Looking for the right venue, and certainly I welcome any advice in terms of audiences. The tricky part is to how can we get to a big audience like this where we can get to a lot of people at one time. So, but they are very vulnerable. And this program is for everybody, including veterans. Thank you for pointing that out.
My question is, what happens after the period? Do you find that referrals to psychologists are equal to those referrals that go to psychiatrists?
Well, psychiatrists, generally, you can't, generally, it's difficult to get into a psychiatrist unless you are admitted into an inpatient program, as a general rule. I don't want to be wrong, but from my personal experience, my own mother has gone through inpatient and receives now treatment and help from a psychiatrist, but she wouldn't have, I don't think, had she not been admitted to an inpatient treatment center. My mother, Barb, in Pentwater, she's gone through electric compulsory treatment 36 times. She's dealt with depression for 40 years. To answer your question, therapy is hugely important, and getting to the right therapist. Many times we see that people get to a therapist, but it's just not the right fit. So then it's time to move on to the next therapist. But it's hugely important to stay connected with someone that can speak with them and keep that conversation going. So we are, if my sons didn't know what to do when they were 16 years old, I'd say, hey, go be a therapist. I mean, this world is such a need of good psychologists, therapists, and psychiatrists.
What about the gay and lesbian community? Very, very prone to suicide, and many of our churches do nothing to help them get through their self-identity and what's going on in their life. And I'd like to know how you address that with the churches, how you address that with the schools, and what's going on. As we know, having a gay son, being gay is a perfectly normal thing. It's part of his genetic makeup, and there's nothing he can do about it. Yet I remember him having incidents in school where he was vilified because of his natural being. It doesn't really help their depression or help their self-awareness or justify what they are when we have people like the churches and schools that are telling them that they are damned.
Thank you for bringing that up, a very important issue. There's two schools of thought on that. One is that once you start segregating, now they've got another mark. Okay, if we have this Be Nice for LGBT community, and we have this Be Nice program for the straight community, we start labeling. So that's one school of thought, is that the Be Nice has not taken the initiative to segregate to communities. Will we go to an LGBT community and speak to that community? Absolutely, and we have. But do we have a standalone program for that? Absolutely not. Is it in some of the video that you missed? Yes. These are risk factors, and it shouldn't be a risk factor. Being gay or lesbian shouldn't be a risk factor, but it is because it's labeled by others. So from our perspective is that we want to be inclusive of everyone, regardless of age, sex, and sexual preference, and otherwise. So a very important piece, and it's part of our mission, is to bring all people, as you saw, our mission, to mental illness through all. And the churches, in my opinion, have to embrace it the same way. But I do believe there is some harm to segregating and further labeling.
Any other questions? Right here.
Thanks for your presentation, appreciate it. And I have a nephew who's suicidal. So for just for the sake of argument, let's assume that Scott is the most complicated person in case that you have ever heard of. PTSD, lost his arm, been to therapists, some addiction, etc. Can you point me in a direction that might be effective for him, assuming all these complications? Like, in other words, he has a psychiatrist, etc.
Sure. And I'm assuming that has he attempted to take his life? Talks about it. Does he have a plan? Okay. So there, and again, is the Be Nice action. First thing I would do is to notice what's right, what's good about him, and then look changes in his behavior. If there are those major changes, yes, he has risk factors because he's PTSD, he lost an arm, and he's got all these things, so he's definitely at risk for mental illness, and already has PTSD. But I would invite myself, loving, caring conversation, and invite myself to say, are you thinking of killing yourself? And if the answer is yes, then it's to the emergency room. And he may have been through, has he been admitted into inpatient? Okay. Well, I'm going to use my mother as an example, okay? My mother, Barb Davidson, she was suicidal. I've asked her 100 times, and finally she said yes. And do you have a plan? No, but it was enough to say, okay, Mom, we're getting you to the emergency room, get a professional assessment, because they'll get a professional assessment, they'll ask the right questions. Again, our job is to be the lifeguard, not the EMT. Let's get them to the hospital, let them do their work, and let them make the call. Is this person suicidal, at risk of taking their own life or someone else's, and then get them admitted to the professional help. So that would be my recommendation. Has all the risk factors, but that question, in my advice, would be, without knowing much further, is doing exactly that. I think there was one way to do it.
This will be the last one. I'm running out of steam.
What about in our nation that things have become more virulent in general for everyone? People are pointing fingers at everybody else, and the only time they think about is themselves or us rather than the community. Is there a way to quell it so that it isn't a general nation of mental illness?
My mind immediately went to like these mass killings. Is that partly what you're talking about?
The general atmosphere of the whole nation.
Okay. Well, I think the general atmosphere of the whole nation is like, I think first thing that came to my mind is these mass killings. Parkland, Florida, you name it, they've been all over. What drives that person? That person is suicidal. Why is that person suicidal? Because that person probably has a mental illness. Well, why didn't we get that person help in the first place? Because we didn't have the tool. And so all of a sudden, this becomes commonplace in my mind. I'm not a scholar, but in my mind, this becomes commonplace and we can't seem to find the fix. And people says, well, I always hear people say, well, we just need to talk about it. I hear on the news, that's good, we're talking about it. Well, I say, baloney. I mean, if we just talk about it, we might even make things worse, unless we have an action plan. And that's what this is all about. And so that's, in my mind, when President Trump invited the parents and the students, surviving students from the Parkland disaster to the Oval Office, I thought, wow, we really got something here. This is going to take the nation by storm. And they're really going to do something about it. I think we need to be nice to the Secretary of Education in Washington, D.C., and